You're listening to the Happy Workaholic Podcast. I'm your host, Kellyanne Gorman. This show was once about business, LinkedIn, and my life with an autoimmune disease. And then one day I found out I was misdiagnosed, so I had to switch things up a bit. Life is so short, and when you're given a second chance, you better believe I'm going to take it, celebrate it, and share it with you. I'm on a mission to help women take their business and life to that next level they deserve to be at. This show is intended to elevate your mind, upgrade your business, enhance your life, and become part of a positive and uplifting community. Inspiration, motivation, and determination are what got me to where I am today, and I cannot wait to share these amazing stories of other female entrepreneurs who will be featured on the show. If you have a story or brand you want to share, send me a message on Facebook and Instagram today. You can find me at The Happy Workaholic. I would love to connect with you. Do you want a live chat during this episode? Make sure you're listening on iHeartRadio. I'm here to remind you to work hard, stay humble, follow your dreams, and never, ever give up. Thanks for taking the time to subscribe to the Happy Workaholic Podcast. And now let's get into today's show. Hey everyone, thanks again for taking the time to listen to the Happy Workaholic Podcast. Before we hop into today's episode for the I Chose This Life series, I want to say thank you because as of this morning, we are officially in 60 countries. This podcast has been global for quite some time. I've been sitting on 59 countries for a couple weeks now and just waiting for that 60 to show up, and this morning it happened. So thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for heading over to Apple Podcasts and giving me a rating, a review. You're subscribing to this show. Please head on over to the Happy Workaholic Network Facebook group. I would love to see you in there. As a very special bonus, and thank you really to you guys because I'm so honored that you take the time to listen. I'm so appreciative for all the feedback and reviews I get. And I want to share something with you right now. And I want you to be a part of this global community. And there's 4 ways for you to do so. If you head on over to my Instagram, you can find me at The Happy Workaholic. Click that link in my bio and join my global community today. You guys are absolutely going to love it. It's all about sharing what you have, your message to share, your website, your social media, what you have going on. It's all about you. I would love for you to check it out. And as always, if you have any questions, you can always find me on social media, message me, or send me a message through my website, which is thehappyworkaholic.com. Now let's get into today's show because it is so good. Hello, and welcome back to a brand new episode for the I Chose This Life series. Today, I have a very special guest and one of my first nurses on the show, if you can actually believe it. I have Tammy Vaught on the show, and she is actually a certified registered nurse anesthesiologist. Tammy, are you with us?
I am here.
Hi, welcome to the Happy Workaholic Podcast.
Hi, glad to be here.
I know, I'm so excited. We were talking about this for a little while. Can you introduce yourself to the audience?
So yeah, my name is Tammy, like you mentioned, Tammy Vaught, and I am a certified registered nurse anesthetist or nurse anesthesiologist, however you want to phrase it. And I practice in Midland, Texas, so out in the middle of nowhere, out amongst all the oil derricks. And I'm Texas born and lived away for a little while, but been back for the last 8 years and set up shop and making roots here in Midland.
Now, can you tell us what was your journey into nursing? What did that look like? How did your career begin?
So when I started college, I thought maybe medical school, maybe music. Like I was all over the place. And so as I was kind of journeying in my first year in college, taking a variety of classes, it became apparent very quickly that music was my hobby and science was more of my passion. But I also decided medical school wasn't the right route for me. And so I decided to start looking into nursing and started checking away with the classes. And the more I got into it, the more I loved it. And I graduated back in a long time ago, 1998. So I've been out of nursing school a long time. And I started out as an ER nurse. and I was an ER nurse for many years, in all kinds of ERs, big, huge level 1 trauma centers in Detroit, and small little ERs in small towns. But that's kind of how I got started in the whole nursing thing. I actually thought about doing music therapy because I love music so much, and it kind of combines the science and the music. But after I got into my nursing classes, the passion was obvious, so I just kept it going.
Now, as an ER nurse, I know your schedules are long, only because I've been to so many ERs over the past couple of years. How do you balance how is your work-life balance? What does that look like for you?
Well, when I was an ER nurse, because I'm not doing that kind of nursing anymore, but when I was an ER nurse, I worked 12-hour shifts, and I worked midnights a lot. That was back before I had kids, and was just young married girl, and was able to, it didn't really matter. So I just worked a ton and paid off school loans, and working was kind of my life other than spending time with my husband. But being an ER nurse, it is emotionally and physically daunting. And after several years, there's some really traumatic cases in the ER that really probably generated some post-traumatic stress for me. I realized that being an ER nurse was not something that I could do forever. And so I started looking at other options, because in the nursing profession, that's one thing that's so awesome, is that there is so many different fields within the nursing profession that you can explore. And so if something is your boat for a little while, but not forever, you can look into options and change it to something else. And so that's how I found myself in my current profession, which is as a nurse anesthetist. I went back to school and got a master's degree in anesthesia and started doing anesthesia in the operating room. It was something I felt like was a career that I could evolve into, but one that I can have some longevity with, that wouldn't be as physically and emotionally exhaustive.
What do you think inspired you the most transitioning into that? What was your motivation other than, going through the trauma, which of course I can only imagine, working those shifts in the ER? Is there something other than just wanting to change the direction of your nursing career, or?
There is a lot of factors. When I started exploring options, I was looking for a couple different things. I was looking for an area that, like I mentioned, was a bit less
stressful
and emotional. Although anesthesia, there's a joke in the anesthesia community that we're like 99% boredom and 1% complete scary chaos stress. Because when it's going well, it's really going well, and when it's going bad, it goes bad fast, and it goes really bad. So the environment, though, I loved ER nursing, and the environment of an OR is somewhat similar in that you meet a patient the day of. You have to build a rapport with them very quickly, and I have a personality that's able to build trust and build rapport pretty quick. And then you take care of them for a finite amount of time, and then you say goodbye. Versus, an ICU nurse or a floor nurse, sometimes you're taking care of the same patient for weeks or months. And so that was one of my draws to anesthesia, was that similarity. And still having a little bit of adrenaline with the trauma cases and the big, emergency cases, still having that kind of adrenaline. And then honestly, when you look at nursing as a whole, nurse anesthesia is considered one of the pinnacles of our field. It's very challenging. It is highly respected area of the nursing profession. And it also is very lucrative, and that it's one of the better financial areas as a nurse as far as making a living. So those factors all kind of wrapped together caused me to seek out a degree in nurse anesthesia.
That's amazing. Now, coming from a patient perspective, since I have been the last couple of years, in the very beginning when I had some surgeries done, I was petrified of needles. I mean, I couldn't even go get my blood done. But then once I had my metal port, it made my life a lot easier. I had that flushed every month. And then The chemo needles, are big ones, but do you have any tips that you could share with patients that are listening that would be super nervous when it comes to the needles, like I was long ago?
Oh, wow. With my current, what I'm doing currently now, with my new endeavor, with my clinic, every single patient that comes into my clinic gets an IV, and they're getting an IV 6 times within a couple of weeks. And that's a common thread, is a lot of them are very anxious of needles. And, it's a true phobia. And I found that, much like yourself, the repeat exposure can often desensitize someone to IVs. Obviously, that's not feasible for most people. It's not like you can go in and say, I need to get poked every day for the next 5 days so that I can get over this fear. There's certain things that you can request and ask for. As far as there's numbing creams, you can ask for a really, really small, like, micro needle to use to put a little dot of numbing medicine at the side of the IV. Making sure that you're in a relaxed position, because that's a lot of times when someone panics and ends up passing out or things like that, they're trying to sit up and their adrenaline's pumping, and so that causes their body to just go into a reaction that causes them to pass out. So, laying down and having your feet up and trying to just breathe and focus somewhere else and focus on something else. But, needles are tough.
I know.
When people have a true phobia, they have a true phobia, and it's tough to work through.
I'm listening to you talk, and I'm, like, reminiscing about all these times to, like, she's a hard stick. But I have requested every single possible numbing cream in the past. But I do agree with you when you said, frequent exposure. I mean, I was petrified of the little butterfly needles just to get my blood done. But then I think also what happened was when I had a surgery years ago, it was like 2012, it took an hour and a half for the nurses and anesthesiologists to get an IV in me for surgery. And I would always think back to that time, like even just getting labs done. I'm like, it's going to be an hour and a half. And then some miracle worker nurse would come over and be like, boop, you're done. And then another time when I was in the hospital for 9 days, I actually didn't have any IV overnight because 5 nurses, including the trauma nurses, could not get anything in my veins. And, when the veins are invisible, it just makes it that much harder. And what's the trick with the heat? If you add the heat or the heating pack or the ice pack, is it hot or cold? I forgot.
Right, warm, yeah. So that helps to dilate the blood vessels so they pop up better.
Oh, yeah.
Hydration, being really well hydrated, which obviously if someone's getting an IV, a lot of times that's not the case. That's why they're getting an IV, is because they're dehydrated. But the other option is, trying to warm up the vessels to plump them up. It dilates them.
Now, when you have an IV in, it's 36 hours that you can have max, right? That's what I've had.
Oh, no. I think that most hospitals have, like, protocols where it's 72 hours, I think, and then you have to have a new restart.
Yeah, 72 hours. I think, I only had 3 days. Is that 72 hours? No.
That's 72 hours.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, 3. And then
72.
Yeah, and then they reset. Yeah, I've had that twice with my IV steroids and when I had IVIG getting done. Thank God I had that port afterwards because I just have no veins. Like everyone's always said that to me. Now, I want to get into your newest endeavor that we just briefly touched upon and all about ketamine. So can you explain what this is and what you're doing with your current position? Because I feel like it's not very common and everybody needs to learn more about it.
Yeah, thanks for asking. So it's very exciting. I never expected to be down this path in my career, and now I can't imagine doing anything else. It's just been amazing and rewarding. So ketamine is an anesthesia drug. So that was my first exposure to ketamine, was in the operating room. We give it in the operating room for sedation and also for acute pain management, so for surgical pain. And we're trained with that drug, and I give it almost every time I'm in the operating room. It's a great medication. And it wasn't until probably 3.5 years ago, I was actually doing some research for a friend who suffered from severe depression and also chronic pain due to diabetic neuropathy. And I was just looking for some alternatives for him. What he was doing wasn't working, and just trying to help him. And ketamine came up in my searches. And so, of course, that sparked my interest because it's a drug I know well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started reading everything I could read, books, articles, research. And then I started visiting with some clinics around the country, colleagues that have clinics. And that's when I realized that ketamine was being utilized for the treatment of mental health diagnoses and neuropathic chronic pain. And it blew my mind because I didn't know that this was something that was going on. And interestingly enough, it's not new, even though it is only newly gaining momentum and gaining national attention. The first studies were early 2000s, and there are patients that have been receiving ketamine infusions for over 20 years for treatment of mental health and chronic pain. And then in the last probably 5 years did it really gain momentum and lots of clinics started opening, and all the major education institutions in the country are doing research studies. And so I started looking for a clinic for my friend, and the closest clinic was approximately 300 miles away from us. And there's nothing in a 300-mile radius of where I live. And so I thought, well, maybe this is something I could offer our community because it's a very valid treatment option. It's out of the box, it's new, and we're getting amazing results. And so I started doing the heavy work and opened my clinic in November of 2017. So we're heading towards 2 years of being open.
Congratulations. That's absolutely amazing. And I love that you just took charge and made that happen for something that you're so passionate about. I have a question. So if somebody is on medication for anxiety or depression and they're coming off pills, you get weaned off the pills and then transfer over to the ketamine? Do you need to get weaned off of what you're on in order to make the transition to the ketamine?
That's a great question. No, you don't have to. I have lots of patients that are on anywhere from 1 to 7 different psychiatric-related medications. Because I don't know how familiar you are with the psychiatric medication realm, but often one medication helps this, but it causes this undesirable side effect. So then you add in this psychiatric medication to help with that side effect, but then it causes this side effect. And the next thing you know, you're on like 7 different ones. And
that happened exactly. I was on, I think, 5, literally because of that. And I always say that, like, I'm on a pill because of a pill. And I actually had a psychologist that I started seeing, and it was her job to explain how they work together and the benefits together of like upping a dose and lowering another, so that I would have the true benefit of like actually being able to sleep at night, or not having panic attacks. But I love that you just mentioned that, because it's so true, and I don't think people realize that when you have them combined, the powerful benefits they have, or why you need to be on so many.
Right. Well, and so a lot of patients come to me because they are maybe tired of being on so many medications.
Yeah.
And so they will start ketamine treatment with the hopes of being able to come off of or wean down on their medications. All antidepressants and mood stabilizers, with the exception of one, are completely fine to take concurrently with ketamine.
Mm-hmm.
And then the drug grouping of benzodiazepines, so that's for anxiety, like Xanax, Ativan, Klonopin. Those medications, often many of my patients are on those as well, but they're wanting to come off or wean down. The problem with the benzodiazepines is that sometimes it makes the ketamine not as effective. So it's not a problem if they don't interact in a poor, it's not going to make you feel bad or cause some kind of bad reaction, but the ketamine just may not work as well. So I usually try to get patients that are on benzodiazepines to at least take the lowest dose they can. I don't ask them to come off because if you need it, you need it. But to take the lowest dose you can, and to try to not take it maybe the day of infusion or maybe the hours right prior to infusion. Try to space it out as much as possible. But I've had a lot of patients that were on, high dosing. Ativan 4 or 5 times a day.
Oh my God.
They've been able to come off of their benzos by supplementing with ketamine.
That's amazing. And for any patient listening, please make sure you do your research when you start getting off these meds, because speaking from experience, I was on 13 medications and I stopped December and I'm still having crazy withdrawals, and it's July.
Benzodiazepines and medications, some of the mood stabilizers like Lamictal, which is also known as lamotrigine, they are very, very hard to come off of. Like harder than narcotics. Narcotics get all the rap as far as how you have to go through detox. And yes, you do have to go through detox on narcotics, but benzodiazepines, certain antidepressants, it's all the same as far as the weaning. It's tough and it takes a long time, and it should be guided by a physician or a qualified medical provider. Don't just try to do it without some guidance.
I was told I could come off all of my medications, and I made the choice to do it a lot quicker than I maybe should have, which I definitely do not recommend. And I had the worst detoxing, but also because I was coming off so much at once. But I had vertigo. I was getting vertigo really, really bad. And that's a side effect from certain medications I was on. Because I was coming off so many at once, I started getting vertigo. And then just a couple months, well, no, it was about a month ago, I went to my ENT for the vertigo, and he put me on 3 meds. So I was on one of the strongest antibiotics on the market 5 times a day, mixed with a water pill to help drain my ear, as well as steroids, which I absolutely hate. And I said, okay, well, if this concoction is going to kill this vertigo, then let's do it. So for 3 solid weeks, I was on those strong pills as a concoction to fix the problem from other pills. I'm like, again, I'm on pills because I was on pills. And now, luckily, I'm back to just my vitamins, but still, like, I've never been so tired. Like, people don't realize, and this is why it's so important to ask questions when you see doctors, because if I didn't ask for a psychologist or somebody to explain all the drugs I was on, I was doing it myself. But not everybody has that capability or ability to do that. But you need to always be speaking with a medical professional, because it's their job and they're well versed in all of the side effects. And what happens if you do up a dose by just 5 milligrams? Like, you're ruining your insides and you don't even know that's happening until something shows up, and then you're like, oh my God, that's because I upped my dose. Well, don't up your dose. So when you start ketamine, does it go by, and maybe not a lot of people know this that are listening, but when you're on certain IV drugs, it goes by your weight. And when I was doing my chemo, it would go, my dose was by my weight, but it would also be a slower push, so through the IV. So when you start ketamine, do you always, is it by weight? And then also, does every patient start at the same dose, or is per person?
So it's definitely dosed by weight, and we start out, I should back up, it depends on what diagnosis we're treating. So if it's for mental health, it starts at a certain dosing, and it's milligrams per kilogram. It's dependent on their weight. And if you're being treated for pain, it's not only higher dosing, but it's a longer infusion. So mental health infusions are only about an hour long. And then a chronic pain infusion is 2 to 4 hours long. And the main reason for it being longer is because we dose it so much higher. To be able to tolerate it, you need to space it out longer. But yes, so someone comes in and their first infusion, we start at a certain dose and mix that in a syringe, and it's run on an IV pump over a slow infusion on the IV pump over an hour. And then each subsequent infusion, we make adjustments to the dosing depending how the patient, tolerated the previous infusion, and we just make adjustments as they need.
Now, when you're at the clinic, and say I was a patient, I'm at the clinic and I'm getting my dose, do I feel anything while I'm there, or do I feel anything when I leave? And how long does that treatment stay for? Like, what would be my schedule? I would come in every 2 weeks, or how long is the regimen for that, the treatment plan?
So for mental health, the current recommended protocol for that is 6 infusions. And those infusions happen over about a 2 to 3 week period of time. So it's real intensive up front. Because each infusion builds on itself, its cumulative effect. And to get the best effect and the most long-lasting effect, you've got to do several real close together. And so that, each patient is a little different as far as I work with their schedule. And so some patients can do every other day. Some patients need to do 2 in a row, take 3 days off, do 2 in a row, just kind of what works with their schedule and their support system. So the whole idea is just to get 6 infusions in over about 2 to 3 weeks. As far as what you feel, so ketamine is a dissociative anesthetic. So we're trying to achieve a level of dissociation. And that looks different for everybody. For some people, they feel like they're floating. They feel kind of like they're moving in water. For some patients, it's, like looking down at your hand on the chair, and you can see your hand, and you can see your hand moving, but it almost feels like it's not attached to your body because it feels like you're dissociating, like it's not attached to you. Some patients have very vivid, colorful array of visuals, kind of like when their eyes are closed. It's almost like a dream. You're not under anesthesia. You're not completely asleep. When I come in and check on you, you're always able to answer my questions and give me a thumbs up, or let me know that you're nauseous, or let me know that you're cold. But you're definitely in an altered state of mind.
Are you? You can't drive after, though, right?
No, okay. No, you have to have a driver. And that altered state of mind is usually confined to the treatment. So when the infusion's off, within the next 15 minutes, patients are usually like opening their eyes and they're like, is the infusion done? Because they can tell they're starting to kind of come back to reality. So by the time that you're being discharged from here, you may be a bit dizzy or a bit kind of off or sleepy or feeling kind of worn out, but you're not still having the dissociative effect of feeling out of body, I guess.
So after the 2 weeks, what's the regimen usually?
In my clinic, I always schedule for patients for a single infusion a month later.
Okay.
And then we kind of talk at that point in time if you're doing well and you want to push out and do your next booster several months down the road, or if you want to go ahead and put a booster on the schedule once a month for a little while. It's really dependent on a patient's diagnosis. Patients with really complex compounding diagnoses, some of them see me once a month. It's part of their treatment plan. They are doing it either in place of or in addition to their medications. So they're here every month. But then I have some patients that have essentially gone into a remission. And so they know they can reach out to me when they need me if they feel like they start sliding backwards or having trouble.
Wow, that's amazing that it works that well. Is this something that some insurances actually cover?
So at this point in time, there has not been any kind of consistency with insurance coverage, largely because it's not FDA approved for this use. It's off-label use of the drug.
Got it.
Now, with that being said, there is a new drug that just came out in March, was FDA approved, and it's a sister drug of ketamine. It's called Spravato, or S-ketamine, and it's a nasal spray. And so, one of the fancy drug companies decided that they wanted to make some bank off of this drug that's generic. Ketamine's generic. So they split it off, got a scientist to split off a little portion of the ketamine that I use, racemic ketamine. They made a new, quote-unquote, new drug out of it, and it's in a nasal spray form. And they're marketing it that it is this new fancy drug to be used for mental health for treatment-resistant depression. And it got FDA approval, and insurance is covering it.
Oh, my God. Wow.
So we're hopeful that because of that the FDA will then follow suit and approve IV ketamine, because the IV ketamine is more effective. It's 100% bioavailable because it's going into your bloodstream, versus a nasal spray that doesn't work as well. And so we're hoping that we will see the future of the FDA approving it, and then it will make life so much easier because insurance companies will cover it, and then it will open up the doors.
You can help more patients.
To treatment.
Now, I have a quick question. Excuse me. Because I'm seeing a trend here, like with my chemo and other drugs and the ketamine, is it common when you get an IV drug, or in my case, like I had IVs and then a port, like anything intravenous, that is the normal protocol to dose up high, like you had mentioned, every week, or get as many in before, like within a 2-week time span, and then push out like once a month? For my chemo, I had it every week, and then I got pushed to once a month and twice a year. Is that common trend for drugs that you get in that way?
Yeah, I guess that it kind of is. I mean, I think it's kind of like maybe the mindset or the research has shown being able to do intense saturation of, in my case, neurons in the brain, receptors, intense saturation, get the best results. There's actually some new studies being done with ketamine to see if we could do it a little more spaced out, like once a week for 6 weeks instead of doing it 6 times in 2 weeks. And the research isn't out yet, so it'll be interesting to see. I'm always open to evolving my practice, changing my protocols if it's what's best for my patients. So if that comes out that that's better, then I'm all, we'll do whatever. But right now, the literature is showing doing an initial kind of saturation of the neurons is what gets our best results.
Now, when you start off in the beginning with more treatments, the side effects of this, like, would I go home if I got a treatment? Are you more tired after, or you're just normal when you leave? Because you've had so much in like a shorter time span.
Right. No, you're pretty wiped out.
Yeah.
In the perfect world, patients would be able to take 2 weeks off of work.
Yeah.
And devote all their energy to this, and literally sink into it. Use the days in between infusions to just do healthy things, relaxation, eat good food, go get a massage, yoga, do meditation, and just devote 2 weeks. I had a patient that did that a little while back, and I was like, good for you. He just went all in. But the reality of it is most of my patients have to work. And so we do an infusion, they go home, they get a good dinner, they sleep, and then they go to work the next day, which I hate. I want them to be able to truly take the time to heal. But that's just not always feasible.
Yeah. That's the one thing I was told consistently. You need to rest. But when you're on so many drugs, they give you this boost. And immediately, you're wired. I remember the first day I got chemo, I was a nervous wreck. I got it done. I went home and I cleaned our 4-bedroom house in 2 hours. Like, I was on steroids to like the 20th degree. And then when I was actually on IV steroids for 5 days, I was wired and then I would crash. I was wired and then I would crash. And then later on in my chemo IVs, or when I in my port rather, my treatments, I would slowly, I think because I was so nervous in the beginning, I was wide awake and I had like everything electronic with me, books with me, like everything possible. So I wouldn't like basically lose my mind. But then because it was so common to me, I was going every week. I got familiar with the nurses, like I trusted them, like they got my port right away, like one stick, like we became really good friends. And I would sleep for like 6 hours while I was there. And the only reason why I would wake up is because I was dripping sweat, just because it's a strong drug, you know. But um, is that common with ketamine? Like you get a boost of energy and then you need to rest? Or is that just, or no, it's not like one of those? Or it's different with everybody?
You know, I would tell you no. I mean, I would say the majority would be no.
Yeah.
They just kind of are wiped out.
Yeah.
But there are those patients that will call me the next day and say, you know, I woke up and I just had all this energy and I cleaned the house and my family's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people with chronic depression or chronic pain, they've been not taking care of business at home because they just can't. You know, they cannot physically or emotionally do it. And so all of a sudden the next day they wake up and they feel kind of like this burst of rejuvenation and they're being active and their family's kind of like, who is this new person? But I would say a greater percentage, I mean 80% of my patients feel pretty exhausted after treatment.
And for those of you listening, take our advice. Please rest. I can tell you from experience. Yes. I'm paying for it 3 years later. I'm still exhausted. Even now, my therapist, my doctors, my friends are like, you have to. I feel so guilty when I sleep. And sometimes I'll take a nap. I have this app of ocean music, even though now I like literally live within walking distance of the ocean, but I always have to have the waves crashing and I'm like a baby and I fall like right to sleep. I'll take a 3 to 4 hour nap still. Like out of nowhere, like my body is just like, nope, you're done. So the best advice I can give to any other patient is just always listen to your body and just rest when you need to, especially if you're getting any kind of treatment or starting a new medication, because I am the type of person that is go, go, go all the time. And then it's like you crash and burn. And everybody says that, but you don't want to believe them. You just want to move on with your life and like figure it out, you know, but you really have to just take the time and listen to your body and sleep. Sleep is the best.
Yes, thank you for saying that because that is so important. You're right. No matter what the treatment, if that's ketamine, whatever kind of treatment, taking the opportunity to let your body heal in whatever capacity it's needing to. I think that we take for granted that it's like, I don't know. We'll be okay. We got to do this. Expectation is this. And it's like, well, I mean, excuse my French, but screw the expectation.
Yeah.
Do what you need to do.
Oh, we can swear on this show. Don't worry. I think I realized this the most when I was just on these 3 drugs to kill my vertigo, because I was getting nauseous and I was so sick. I just felt so sick. And I realized, you know, I've always been one to like pop an ibuprofen on an empty stomach if I had cramps, or it just never, like, it never affected me. Now my body is like a clean slate. You know, I don't have all these drugs in my system anymore and I'm still detoxing. So now when I put one of the strongest antibiotics on the market in my system 5 times a day, it's like killing me. Like I'm exhausted, and it really woke me up like, wow, you are a completely different person right now. Like you're in, like my insides, my body, it's like I've never had a drug in my life. I'm so sensitive now, which is so crazy. So when you go and switch up a dose or a doctor puts you on another medication, my suggestion is, because not every doctor pays attention, and I know this from experience, I always ask the pharmacist, and I actually said this on a podcast a couple months ago or a couple weeks ago. I don't know if it's a California law or CVS, but I went to my CVS inside Target, and when you're on a new medication, the pharmacist doesn't give it to you until you go around the corner and they describe it to you and they ask you questions about it, make sure like you're knowledgeable about like what you're taking. And it's always good to get a second opinion. It's always good to ask questions. Like, you have to. It's up to you, for yourself to just know. And I always would take notes, but sometimes, everybody's busy. And unfortunately, like, not all doctors are on their A game all the time. And now that I went to this CVS, and I was so impressed, and I said, "Is this like your normal protocol?" And she said, "Yes." But I didn't know if it meant California or just CVS, but I think that's great because then it gives you a second opportunity. Okay, I'm actually on this higher dose now, and then I'm on these 3 other drugs. Like, is that all okay to take together? Because I was on, now I'm on vitamins, just vitamins, and then I have my thyroid medicine, and then ibuprofen if I need it. But everything else is vitamins. Well, I was taking a multivitamin plus my iron, B, and D. And whatever else was combined in my multivitamin with this antibiotic was making me like just crash. And because I noticed that, I always used to keep a journal just because my memory is awful. Like every day I would write down how I felt so that we could track it back to why or like what drug. Okay, well that one doesn't work out for you. So always just keep notes and always, track how you feel, I would say is your biggest thing, because every week when I go to the doctor now, I pull up my notes and she's like, okay, what's in your notes? And I track like every week because otherwise I'll forget.
Yeah. That's one of the things I recommend to my patients before they start treatment here is the week leading up to treatment, starting a journal, and documenting, everything. Things how you felt, things that made you happy, things that made you sad. Did the treatment make you nauseous? Did we change dosing? Document it all so that you can see the trends. And I also utilize a texting application called Mood Monitor that texts my patients and sends me graphs.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
How their mood is faring during, before, and after treatment. And so it helps me to guide my treatment because, we can't draw a lab result that says, oh, you're severely depressed, or oh, your anxiety is so much better, look at your level. It's all subjective, so I have to follow it through someone's responses to a questionnaire, and so it's been really helpful.
That's amazing. I didn't even know something like that existed. I am so honored that you took the time out of your crazy busy schedule to come on my show. I could literally talk to you for 5 more hours about all of this because I feel like just because the life I've lived the last 3 years, like I'm just so curious about so much more. But obviously this is the I Chose This Life series, so I want to ask you, why did you choose this life?
Oh my gosh, because I feel like I've been called to this world to help other people, and that's evolved over the years. It went from ER nursing to anesthesia, and now it's helped people suffering from mental health. And I just feel like that there is not enough attention to it, that we are quick to treat our diabetes, but we brush our depression and anxiety under the carpet. And I just want to be a voice that sheds light and brings down barriers, and hopefully then ultimately offers hope. And so I just think that God placed me here for a purpose, and it was to do this very thing.
That is literally the most absolutely most perfect answer ever. And I just want to add, I agree with you. Like, mental health is so huge. And I feel like maybe the last year and a half, like 2 years, it's becoming okay to talk about it more. And like, you see so many more podcasts talking about it and more Facebook Lives and more all over social media. But I feel like that's only happened because we've had people pass away or something happen because of that. So I think the more proactive we are and the more that we continue to talk about it moving forward, we're not going to have those sad stories pop up on social media where the end result is not good. So thank you so much for taking the time to be on my show. Like I said, I could literally talk to you for like 5 more hours because I'm so curious about more of this. What do you do to get the word out about your clinic? Do you advertise?
I have a marketing company that does all of my digital marketing and internet type marketing. Other than that, it's really been kind of word of mouth. patient gets great results, and so then they know somebody that needs help, and then, and it just kind of has gone that way. And that's kind of been the base of my so far. It's my digital marketing company and the word of mouth.
That's perfect. Now, where can everybody find you online? And I'm going to put your website and everything in the show notes.
So my website, and it has a wealth of information, articles, videos, all kinds of things for more information about ketamine, is ketamineclinicofwesttexas.com. So just all together, ketamineclinicofwesttexas.com. And ketamine is spelled Ketamine. And it's the same on Facebook. I have a Facebook page, Instagram. And then my website has the most information on it.
That's perfect. I can't wait to check out more information. I didn't realize there was videos and more info, and I'm so curious, and I hope that this episode is helping you guys listening. If you know anybody that's looking for this solution in their own healthcare regimen and in the Texas area, you can click the link in the show notes. And again, if you guys have any questions, reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to answer them for you. Tammy, do you want to add anything else?
No, and there's clinics around the country. So even if you're not in Texas, Google ketamine for depression or alternative treatments for depression and anxiety or fibromyalgia or migraines, and ketamine clinics close to you will come up. And if you have questions as to whether or not it's a reputable clinic or what my thoughts are on a particular clinic or treatment course, feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to give you my thoughts.
Oh, thank you so much. That would be great. I think everybody would appreciate that. Thanks again for taking the time. I know your schedule is crazy. You're off to your son's basketball. Is it basketball game?
Yeah, basketball game. Last one of the season. He's 7.5. He hasn't made a goal, but it's okay.
It's okay.
I'm trying not to be that mom. But thank you so much. It has been great fun, and I really appreciate the opportunity to share.
Oh, my pleasure. Absolutely. I definitely want to have you on again for my new patient series coming up in the fall, winter. Thanks again, Tammy. Have a great day.
Okay, you too.
Thank you so much for listening to today's show. If you liked this episode, please share it with someone who you feel needs to hear this message. And don't forget to tag me at The Happy Workaholic on Facebook and Instagram so I can feature you on my stories. And if you have 2 minutes and listening on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, I would love it if you could leave me a review. Those messages mean so much to us podcasters, and they really help me create more of the content that you'll love. Want to continue today's conversation? It's simple. Head to Facebook and search for the Happy Workaholic Network Facebook group. Answer the questions and you're in. For more information on myself, coaching programs, weekly newsletter, and more, visit thehappyworkaholic.com. The Happy Workaholic Podcast is part of the iHeartRadio Podcast Network. Be sure to follow the Happy Workaholic Podcast on iHeartRadio or subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. I hope that your day continues to be happy, healthy, positive, and productive, and I'll talk to you again soon.